Oh, is it the cover? Alright. Don't touch that.
Without directly off.
Sorry guys. We like plug it. If I can plug it. Okay. Unplug it and plug back in. I don't know. You can unplug it.
So in the future, we'll just say, no.
Yeah, next time no one's there. I think that's your head. You might have to sit there.
This is like,
Oh my, what is that? What is that? What is that?
Trying to figure it out.
So my face is going to be in the middle of it now. Yeah, we're going to see you the whole time. It's such a delay. It's really weird. The first time it was hard because they had like the screen and then they had like the panel. Yeah. And then I had to move it and I was like waiting to see if I could see all the faces and I couldn't. Yeah. Yeah, three faces. Yeah, I think it's good. I mean, unless... No, Trung's not in it, so if you want to... But I don't think there's a way you can get Trung and...
He did just walk.
Oh, yeah, true.
Can you guys hear me in the back? Yeah, we can. Awesome. Welcome to the 2015 Ummss Careers Night. Apologise for the late start. We just had a few issues on the live stream, but it's back online.
It's pretty fun. Yeah.
So, before we start, I'd just like to do some housekeeping. William Poe, your ID's here from St. Lee's. Come down and get it. Alright. So I'd just like to give you a brief snippet of the educational events we're planning for this year. So the internship interview workshop will be held in the next few weeks. Then Code Black, ED and intensive care simulations, long case masterclass, obstetrics and gynecology workshop. They're all held in semester 2. Now the internship interview workshop, we need help. So if you're in the MD4, if you'd like to help us out, please shoot me an email, education@ummss.org.au. We are rushed for time, so please help out. Now I'd like to big thank you to my education subcommittee. They're here for all the hard work the last few weeks. It's been hectic, but thank you. So this night will be broken up into 2 parts. The first part will be roughly an hour long. To kick off, we'll have the postgraduate Medical Council Victoria, PMCV CEO, Miss Jordon, to tell us about the internship matching process and the differences between intern, resident, registrar, fellow, etc. Then we have Bongiorno talking about the student loans. Then Dr. Sara will talk about the physician training program. Then we have Dr. Radhika Sheorey from MIPS to talk about her tips for the young practitioner. After that, we'll have a 10-minute intercession. Now, I'd like to thank our sponsors, RAPGP, MDA National, Bongiorno Group, and MIPS for supporting this event. They all have booths outside, so please go and talk to them. We also have pizza. We have 60 boxes of pizza. Now, after the pizza, do stay. We've saved the best to last. Coming up, we have the Paediatric ED training program of Dr. Amarakone, the author of the Oxford Handbook of Clinical Specialties. I got my book signed. Then we have the surgeon, Dr. Jordon Jones. Is he in yet, or is he still operating? No. Then we have the GP fellow, Dr. Niroshe Amarasekera. And finally, we have the star, Dr. Monteith, talking about opportunities in medical school and how to build a competitive CV. So, without further ado, I'd like to welcome the first speaker of the night, Miss Jordon.
Associated with pre-vocational training. So just a little spiel about the Postgraduate Medical Council, so that those of you who graduate in the next year or so know something about the work of their council. So we've been around 16 or 17 years, and our remit really is working with pre-vocational doctors. We conduct the accreditation process for both the intern and PGY 2 years. So those jobs that you will be working in health services or general practice or in community settings, those posts have been assessed by our accreditation teams just to make sure that they're safe for you, and also that you have the educational opportunities in the appropriate supervision. We also work very closely with junior medical officers in hospitals and the RMO societies. So some of the projects we're working on are transition from medical student to internship. Obviously, welfare is a very important and significant aspect of your working life, especially in those early years when you go from being a student to becoming all of a sudden a doctor. And we also run a number of professional development programs that help you with leadership skills, with teaching and mentoring medical students. And of course, one of the most significant pieces of work we do is to run a computer matching service. So not only for medical students into internship, but once you're an intern into your second postgraduate year, we also run the basic physician training match and the radiology training match for the College of Radiologists, and then some non-medical matches as well. And we also run professional development and support programs for supervisors of junior doctors and also for the educators in health services. So the intern matching process, so I've kept this very general. I mean, it's what happens at the present time, but things are always subject to change. So essentially in Victoria, we have a preference-based system, which is based on merit, which is assessed in a variety of ways by health services. In terms of the matching process, there's essentially two parties to the process. You participating as a candidate, so a final year medical student participating in the intern match, seeking an intern job, say, next year. And obviously the other side are the hospitals, the health services that actually offer intern training programs. So the computer matching system collects your preferences confidentially, so those preferences are known to you, they're not known to the health services. And you rank your preferences in the order of where you most want to work. So the highest preference, preference 1, is the health service or the training program that you most want to get into, and you can rank as many preferences as you want to. There's an application process to health services, and you also need to register obviously via the computer matching website. At the present time there's a standard template for CVs, and also at the present candidates need to nominate 2 referees. So we have a computer matching website. That website is available to have a look at. There is, if you look across the top bar, there is a specific header called Intern Match, and you can go into that part of the website and have a look at all of the documents that are uploaded onto the match for this year's intern match. So you use the computer matching website to register for an account, a username, password, and that's where you'll nominate referees, that's where you'll upload your CV, that's where you'll enter your hospital preferences, and that's where we will communicate with you, and once the match is run and the results are released, you'll be able to log into the website and see where you've been matched, or in some occasions you may be an unmatched candidate. So that's basically a very quick snapshot of the candidate side of the computer matching website. The health services, they also have a number of roles and responsibilities. So they put together a description of their health service, also the training positions that are available in the health service, what educational opportunities they offer, and obviously their selection criteria. So what they're sort of looking for from a candidate. They also are responsible for conducting any aspects of the selection process. So there's not a standard selection process across health services. So health services will get access to your referees if you have nominated them as one of your preferences. They'll also get access to your CV. But there may be other information that the health service requires, sometimes a personal referee, sometimes a written statement as to why you want to work in that particular health service. So, you know, one of the things that you need to do is to carefully look at the selection criteria produced by each health service and make sure that you follow any specific requirements for that position. The health service will also, once they've done their selection process, they will rank all of the applicants for a job in their preferred order from highest to lowest, and that gets entered into the matching system as well. So then we have the algorithm, which obviously is a mathematical formula, and what that does is to match your preferences against those of the health service. So the algorithm is written in such a way as to favour the candidate's preference. So the algorithm attempts to match the candidate's highest preference to where they're listed on the health service preference list. So if you are matched, then you assume that you are matched to the highest possible preference based on where the hospital has ranked you. There are some circumstances in which a candidate may be what we call unmatched, and generally that will occur for one of two reasons. Either you haven't ranked enough health services on your priority list, or the health service hasn't ranked you highly enough, or they haven't ranked you at all on their list. So the way in which the intern match runs in Victoria at the present time is that there will be an equal number of unmatched candidates to unmatched positions, and then there's a process to allocate candidates to those positions. This slide just gives you an idea of the breadth of the training programs for internship. It's based on last year's data. So we had 761 accredited intern positions that went into the match last year. And you can see that there's quite a spread between rural, outer metro and the inner metro. So one of the things to carefully think about is to have a mix of health service preferences on your list. Because you can see that at least 2/3 of the positions are outer metro or in rural and regional areas. There also has been a trend in recent years for the Department of Health to support an expansion in rural and regional settings, particularly more recently with the offering of rural community intern programs, which are a mix of rural-based health services and general practice experience. So we now have what's called a rural community intern training program in each of the 5 health department regions in Victoria. Right, the second part of the presentation tonight was to give you just a brief overview of hospital roles and maybe training pathways. So this is, quite simplistic, but anyway. So the first 2 years are generally referred to as the pre-vocational training years. Then the majority of you will apply to enter a basic vocational training program, usually 2 to 3 years. And then there's an advanced training number of years, and at the completion of the college training requirements, you can apply for fellowship and then go into specialist practice. So specifically, pre-vocational training refers to the first years of training that medical graduates undertake after leaving university. Now the terminology is different between states, is different between hospitals, so if you're doing your first postgraduate year, you're actually doing your intern year. Some people might call it the HMO 1 year or the resident medical officer year 1, but essentially your intern year is your first 12 months of pre-vocational training. It's done under supervision. There's an assessment process for each of the rotations that you have to complete during that year, and a health service will need to sign off that you've completed the requirements for internship in order for you to be granted general registration by the Medical Board of Australia. Most doctors will do 2 years of pre-vocational training. So the HMO 2 year, there are general years, there are sort of medical years geared towards entry into physician training, there are streams in surgery geared towards entry into the College of Surgeons program. So in general, most doctors spend 2 to 3 years practicing as a resident or a hospital medical officer in a health service or hospital before applying to enter a college or a vocational training program. Registrars, they're usually doctors who have commenced vocational training through a medical college, and they're usually in PGY3 or PGY4. Fellowship, successful completion of the requirements of a college training program enables you to apply for to become a fellow of the college. So there's a whole lot of rules and application processes around that, but generally you have to put in an application, satisfy all of the requirements for fellowship, and if that's approved by the college, then you can then use the post-nominal, which has an F in front of the nominal. A specialist, so a specialist is usually a fellow who typically works in a specialist private practice, or could also be known as a consultant who works in a hospital or health service. Sometimes they work in both. Sometimes consultants are visiting medical officers, so they might have they might do some locum or have a number of allocated hours at a particular health service. They might rotate across a number of health services, plus work in their own private rooms, etc. Increasingly what we're seeing is a number of doctors deciding not to pursue a college training program, but to remain within a hospital doing a wide variety of jobs, and they're called career medical officers or resident medical officers. I'm not sure if people know, but we run, in conjunction with AMA Victoria, an annual Medical Careers Expo, which is on the 23rd of May this year. Primarily it is aimed at final year medical students going into internship and then other pre-vocational doctors, but there is the majority of training programs, college training programs and health services that offer pre-vocational jobs will be at that expo. And the last slide really is just if you need any further information. So Edwina Snowden is our computer matching manager. I've already shown you just the homepage for the computer matching website, or you can email any inquiries through our PMCV at PMCV email or through the computer matching email. Any questions? That was all very quickly, so I'm not quite sure if that really addressed the sorts of things that you were looking for, but it's certainly giving you an opportunity to go and have a look at the computer matching website if you haven't already done it.
Well, thank you for a few weeks, guys. Make sure you actually buy a ticket. Don't just click attending on the Facebook page. You need to go to the ticket taker and buy a ticket. Now, 1,500 people have clicked attending on the page. So get on quickly. So, next up, we have Bongiorno to talk to us about student loans.
My name's Rick, and this is Mitch, and we're from the Bongiorno group from Melbourne. The Bongiorno group, as you already know, are financial advisors for the medical profession. We're not going to stand up here and talk about our student loan to death like we normally would. So we're at your careers evening, so we thought we'd give you a bit of an insight into what our clients do in terms of going through from a student to their intern years and through the formative years. So we thought we'd give you a bit of. We're giving away a door prize today as well, so anyone who likes to go to the movies, come see us outside. We're giving away a $50 movie voucher. So, Dr. John Ferguson, does anyone know who he is? Hands? Yep, 2 people. Excellent. So he's the... Yeah, that's right. So he's the Chief Medical Officer of the Austin Hospital. So about 12 months ago, we had John into our office to provide an educational session to a lot of interns, about 130 interns, on what the Austin Hospital looks for in an ideal candidate. Okay, so you saw from the previous presentation that the Austin have 60 spots for interns. So that's not a lot. When you think about how many interns will, or how many final years will graduate, there was over 850 last year in Victoria alone, and the Austin gives 60 positions. Now, John and his team at the Austin sat through and did about 225 interviews. So that's a lot of interviews. So a lot of you in the room will get an interview. So once you've got your CV and it's all set, and you've done your cover letter and you've worked hard to actually get that interview, make sure when you're in the interview you actually can converse what you want to do and you rehearse what you want to say, because it is very important. You've got to stand out from the other 224 people that are going. Okay, so make sure you do that. We are going to run another one of these ultimate internship sessions this year. So if you are interested in coming along, please see Mitch and myself outside, and we can actually give you a bit of a heads up on sending out the invitations to you for the Austin. Now, what I want to quickly do is introduce to you a client of ours, Shakira. So Shakira was an intern. I know you've probably seen some of it before. But she's an intern this year.
I'm a second-year hospital medical officer at Eastern Health. I was there for my intern year as well. They've been extremely supportive and a really good place to work at. I've enjoyed these first years very much. I think be smart about your study. Maximise the time away from your desk. It's the last year you've got as a student, and those years are amazing. So make the most of it, both study-wise and outside of uni as well. I took a lot of holidays. I took a pro-med loan actually, and made the most of that money, and had a lot of little time off breaks as well, which was good. You've got to, while you're at the hospital, make your time really efficient. So, you know, be practical about what you need to learn for intern year, and make sure you're learning those skills. You know, cannulas, catheters, things like that you'll be doing on a daily basis when you're a first year at the hospital. I think be prepared. All interviews are slightly different. Talk to people who work at those hospitals, learn their values, you know, learn about the style of interview that you're going to have. So some are group interviews, some are individual. Be on time and dress the part. PMCV put on a lot of good talks, and they've actually got a really good website that has a lot of the key dates and things you need to submit and deadlines. So just as long as you print that out, have it on your wall, I think you'd be pretty well organised and won't have too many nasty surprises. I don't think so. I had a really good final year. It was probably the best year I had at uni. It's a time that you finally feel quite comfortable with your knowledge and you're just excited about finishing and getting into that next period of life and getting off Centrelink and making some money. I think at the start of the year especially, I was just surprised at how tired I was. Going to sleep way earlier than I ever had. Just working these long shifts really do take you by surprise. You will be tired, but you'll get more efficient at your job. You'll be leaving earlier and getting much more into a routine. I think probably the thing I enjoyed most was that camaraderie you build with your fellow interns. I used to catch up a lot with people that I did uni with, and we'd all laugh about the silly things we've done or the embarrassing things we've done in front of senior doctors. It's something that you all go through, and it actually is quite a bonding experience. It was also nice to be finally making some money after being a student for so long. Things that I probably enjoyed less was being tired and just having less time for sort of personal endeavours, I guess. No, I don't think so. I had a really good intern year. You go through ups and downs, but when you look back at it at the end of the year, it actually is a really, really good year. The learning curve is so steep, but so rewarding as well. You know that you've become a better doctor by the end of the year. I think speaking to HMO2, so people who have graduated a year before you, just getting a heads up on what to expect, and even your registrars, it's really good to know that what you might be experiencing is normal, and everyone goes through their frustrations, everyone feels tired, everyone feels embarrassed at times. It's completely normal. You're going from a student to a doctor. It's a huge transition, and don't feel like you're alone if you've got questions or concerns. I think the best thing is to get in early. I probably should have sought help from a financial advisor probably a bit earlier. There's certain things you can do earlier in the year that just makes the rest of the year a little bit more advantageous to yourself. And I think if you're getting early towards the end of your fourth year or your final year of uni, that it makes a hell of a difference to your first year of work. I was very clueless about anything financial, and so I think for me the best thing I did was seek help from someone who knew what they were doing, like Bongiorno. Knowing that they were looking after that part of my life took a big burden off me making the transition from medical student to intern. Just knowing that was definitely sorted and maximised, and I was taking advantage of everything I could, was a really nice thing to have. I think that it's as much as knowing having your medical knowledge up to scratch and knowing where the best resources are. It's focusing on your interpersonal skills at the hospital. You see some interns who have such a different experience to you just because they've annoyed a few nurses or annoyed a few senior doctors. Your life will be so much easier if you focus on maintaining great relationships with the rest of the staff. Multidisciplinary teams, and it makes a huge difference. I have no idea. I'm going to complete my second year as a general year and see what comes in third year.
Thank you, Sheorey. Did anyone notice the plugs in the video? DPM's not here, so it doesn't matter. Just quickly, guys. Wealth creation. Sheorey sort of harped on about it then. One of the good things she did was seek financial advice earlier. Honestly, I couldn't recommend it highly enough. Of my 2015 intern clients this year, 4 of them have already purchased properties, and there's probably about another 20 on the brink. I've got other ones investing in managed funds, into the share market and whatnot. And look, the common denominator with these guys is that they came in early and they understood how things work, how budgeting works, how cash flow works, and as a result they're able to get into the market a lot earlier than most. Just out of curiosity, can I see a show of hands who are final years in here? That's pretty good. There you are up there. It's good. So guys, wealth creation very much starts right now for you guys. You guys are going to hear so much about salary packaging in the next sort of 6-7 months that you'll be very much over it. But what I can tell you is you can start preparing for it now. Most health networks will backdate their salary packaging, which means start collecting receipts now. You know, with your big ticket items like your rent, you want to make sure that if you're sharing a house with someone, you are on the lease. Otherwise, most packaging companies will not accept it. Another little handy tip is that I know Monash Health will backdate their meals and entertainment 5 years, so everyone in this room now can start collecting receipts. We do free tax returns for students and interns, so make sure you come on down. Guys, I know you don't want to hear about it, but I'm just going to quickly say it. We do have a student loan for penultimate and final year students. It is a big help in helping you guys get on your electives and whatnot. If you just want to go on a holiday, it can help. We have to put the disclaimer up, so none of you can hold us to anything we said tonight. Anyway, guys, thank you for having us. My name's Mitch, this is Rick. If you've got any questions, please come see us at the break. Thank you.
Is that a little comfortable for you? Yeah. That's right. Yeah, she's like, it's very expensive.
Sheorey, graduated from Deakin Medical School in 2012. She completed an internship and residency at RMH. She's currently a first-year GP registrar doing 6 months of Paediatrics in the Northern and 6 months of obstetrics at the Royal Women's Hospital. Now we are changing the order a bit because she does need to leave straight after for a night shift at the Northern. Right, thank you. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Dr. Radhika Sheorey.
Hi everyone, so sorry about coming in late and having to leave early, but we'll leave questions till the end. I'm here on behalf of MIPS. As you guys know, they're a medical indemnity insurance company, and there's quite a few of them around. So just before I start, I guess the advice that I give you at the stage that you're at now as medical students is to really make an informed choice about who you're going to go with eventually. But at this stage, you can basically sign up for every single one of them, and it's probably better to do that. And then if you ever find yourself in trouble, you've got a couple of options to go with. So that would be my advice to you guys. And I think in the break and after the session, you can also go and see Nicola from MIPS. We'll be able to check if you guys are already members or whether you need to sign up. So I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about internship and my experiences and things that you might want to know. So just a show of hands for who's first and second year at the moment. Okay, so there's a few of you, and I guess these are the sorts of things that I would have liked to know back then, and the third and fourth years may know bits and pieces of this, but hopefully I'll be able to give you a little bit more information. I guess the funniest thing that's ever happened when you start internship is that a lot of people that are non-medical tend to ask you what it means, what you are you a real doctor? When did you finish med school? You're like, no, I have already finished med school. And so I find that the easiest way to describe this is to just say, first season of Scrubs, that's where I am. So that's a kind of interesting way of describing it, and I think it's a pretty good representation of how your first year sort of goes. So as you guys know, internship is a 1-year contract. It's done at public hospitals across Australia. We're contracted on as an AMA award through an AMA award agreement, and that's for 76 hours a fortnight, which is roughly 38 hours a week. And so basically that's what you're rostered on for. And your pay is about $65,000 a year, that's including superannuation. And so after your contribution, it's about $60,000. That's your base wage, so that's if you only ever work 38 hours a week, which is not the case. You'll often be rostered on, so you'll be rostered on for many more hours a week, so it can be 40, it can be 50, it can sometimes be 60, depending on where you work. And for each one of those rostered hours, you'll get paid, and obviously anything above that 38 hours will be paid at a penalty rate. So that's how you kind of make your money. And obviously working weekends and night shifts paid a little bit more as well. What you don't do unrostered overtime usually, so that's like, you know, you finish work at 9 p.m. but you actually stay back till 10:30 just to finish jobs or things like that. So that's the stuff that you don't get paid for, unless of course you get it signed off by a consultant and medical workforce. So that was always a bit confusing to me, and I remember when I was applying for internship a few years ago, people would always say, oh, but they don't pay overtime, and I'd say that most hospitals don't pay unrostered overtime, but of course they pay you rostered overtime. Salary packaging is something that's already been spoken about, but from a doctor's perspective, I'll say everything that the boys have said so far is completely true. Get in early. For those of you that don't know what it is, it's basically just a way for you to get a proportion of your income tax-free, but you just need to provide receipts to be able to do that. So just make sure that you are on top of that early in fourth year, and before that, I guess you can collect receipts and hope for that. In terms of annual leave, you get 5 weeks as an intern, and it's split 2 weeks between, so during the year, and another 3 weeks at the very end of your internship when the actual next year of interns have already started. And that's you, so the 3 weeks are always at the same time, so everyone in your year level will actually have holidays together for those 3 weeks, so that's pretty cool. So my group of friends who are all at different hospitals all went to Hawaii for that trip, which was amazing. And then your 2 weeks during your working year are given to you, unless of course you've got some sort of wedding or something like that that you request off. So the jobs of an intern, well, they're usually not the nicest or most glamorous of jobs, unfortunately, but you are pretty integral to how the unit runs. So you're obviously responsible for ward rounds, as you guys know, in terms of organising lists, getting the folders in order and taking notes. Referrals, including to radiology, but also to other teams, drug charts and fluid orders, discharge summaries, and a lot of hospitals now have a policy so that you actually, patient has to leave with a discharge summary, so that can be quite stressful when you're trying to juggle lots of things. You will be asked to go along to family meetings and be the medical representative, often by yourself, so that's something that you need to do as an intern as well. You're obviously working with nursing and allied health staff on a day-to-day basis, but you've also got meetings with them where you often as an intern be the only representative of the medical team there as well. And then of course you're responsible for reviewing every investigation that's been done for this patient during their current hospital stay, but you often spend a lot of your time chasing results from GPs and other hospitals as well. And of course you're the first person to get paged when you're reviewing a patient, usually first responder when they're quite sick. So I wanted to throw it back to you guys, and I hope you're not a shy crowd, but I wanted to ask you what you think the attributes of a good intern might be. What have you heard? What do you think along the way? Just throw some ideas out. Don't be shy. I'm going to pick on people. Otherwise.
Organised.
Yep, perfect. Yeah, very good. Yeah, so organised is a pretty important one, especially because you're being pulled in lots of different directions and you need to prioritise. Anything else?
Reliable.
Yeah, you need to be reliable, so that's basically being given a job and being able to see it through and make sure that it's done so that people aren't following up.
Being able to write quickly on a surgical ward round.
Yeah, and also being able to go through a ward round without dropping something. I think I'm third year out and I still dropped my phone. I actually just cracked my iPhone screen overnight from a ward round, so yeah, I agree. Yeah, being able to do that. And I guess that comes back into organisation and relying on your co-intern, so getting a system in place. Yeah, to be safe, exactly. That's a really, really good point. And I guess what I mean by that is, and this is a really, really important one, and this is really what they're looking for in internship sort of applications as well. And it's basically to make sure that, you know your limitations, you know when to call for help, you know where the resources are, whether they're human resources, so, you know, going to your registrar or calling ICU, or whether it's, you know, going to Ummss or therapeutic guidelines and being able to look up certain things. Anything else? Okay, so we came up with most of them, that's really good. I think the ones that we missed were that you need to be a good communicator, and that's not only just to your team members, as you know, but also to your patients. You need to be able to function well in a team, so sometimes that's as a leader and sometimes as a follower. And most importantly, you need to be pretty professional. So you need to dress the part, you need to act the part, you need to be punctual, you need to treat people respectfully and, you know, and make sure that you're holding up the standards of your job. So how to be a good medical student? Well, I'll save you and tell you that it's basically exactly the same list. And so you're actually all in training right now in terms of your transition to internship. And some of you are better than others, no offense. And so this is something that you can work on in the next couple of years, really, to get that organised. So, you know, being safe is something that all of you practice all the time. You have the best practice of being organised. You're being pulled in so many different directions as a medical student. So prioritising is something that you should be good at, and then so on and so forth. The main thing I wanted to point out here is professionalism. So it was a big shock to me as when I started working, and especially started working as a medical educator at one of the hospitals, that the clinical school and consultants have a lot of discussion between them, so a lot of informal discussion about each and every single one of you that I hadn't realised happens, and that sort of freaked me out because it made me think of my medical school days and what might have been said. And I guess the things that they're noticing is, you know, whether they're coming along, whether you're punctual, how you're going, and all of these things are sort of kept in mind, and they could shape, you know, your future employment prospects if that's where you're applying later. So I think be very, very cautious of how you're appearing, especially in front of the rest of the team, because people are taking note. So my final advice, coming to a close, would be, you know, your medical school life is a great time and make the most of it. In your final year especially, you've got to really balance your play, spending time on the wards, which is really, really important leading up to internship, getting involved in extracurricular activities, which not only, you know, broadens you and rounds you as a person, but also sort of, you know, maintains your interest in medicine, and obviously keep up with your studies as well. I think your transition from medical student to internship is going to be the easiest if you spent some time on the wards. And so as medical students, I would say to you that, you know, make the most of it. It's sometimes really difficult, and I remember on certain teams, when I was a medical student, it's very hard to remain engaged when your team kind of forgets that you're there. And so it can be very difficult. But I think that things that you guys can do is be a little bit more proactive. So on ward rounds, if you're standing around, instead of being glazed over, which is usually what I used to do, you know, I got into a habit of actually, if someone said, you know, we need to do these blood tests or do a chest x-ray, to actually go and fetch that form and start writing it out. And usually it would be scribbled out and written out again because I had no idea what was going on. But it was a very, very good way of actually figuring out and learning how to get those skills in place, which is just going to make internships so much easier. Go to your unit meetings and see, you know, what the interns are doing at those presentations. Often for radiology meetings and allied health meetings, they're the ones presenting, and, you know, from the end of fourth year to internship, that's like a 2 or 3 week gap, and then it'll be you all of a sudden. So make sure you're across what it is exactly that is expected of you. Often with registrars, if you're tagging with them and they need to go and see an ED, they'll shoo off the medical student and be like, I've got to go see someone in ED. And I think actually what you should be, if you've got a good relationship with them and they're not actually too swamped, is maybe even saying to them, do you mind if I come along? Or if they've got multiple people to see an ED, we actually as medical students were often asked to go and see patients by ourselves. So we would go off and take about 2 to 3 hours to do a full examination on a patient with no time limit, and we'd call our registrar afterwards, would have written it all up and done a medication chart, but basically had no idea what the plan was or, you know, what's going on, but being able to do that basic history and examination and then using that as a learning point is really, really important. spend time in theatre, and towards the end of your 4th year, if you're not rostered on for a cover shift or an on-call shift, I would make friends with an intern and go along with them just for one 5 to 9 p.m. shift, just to see what it's all about before you start internship. And we often get asked, you know, what's the main difference between a medical student and an intern? And I remember being asked this in one of my interviews, and I was pretty impressed with my answer. And so I'll share it with you now. And it's basically that as a medical student, you're the first one in an emergency to be pushed out of the room, and as an intern, you're the first one to be pushed in there. And I think that really summarises the level of responsibility and you know, responsibility that you need to start having as you sort of move on to your working years. I wanted to finish off with this slide. It's basically a summary, and I know someone else today is speaking about you know, what you can do now as a medical student to work on your CVs and your application sort of process. But this is basically a slide to show you that the modern day doctor is sort of expected to be more than just a clinician. So it's not just your marks and how you do in medical school, but it's also, you know, are you interested in education? Are you involved in research, which obviously all of you will be with your Melbourne Uni course. And obviously, you know, leadership and health promotion is really important too. So keep this in mind, and you know, keep reassessing sort of, you know, where you're at in terms of the things that you've done and whether you need to show more interest or dabble in certain areas. Because what you want to be able to do is present yourself as an all-rounded sort of individual when you're going for your intern applications. And so I'll finish by saying that although internship is a long way away and you've got exams and assignments and all those things in the meantime, you actually can start preparing now for the job that it is. And so I would really say that, you know, make the most of the time that you've got in medical school. I've given recently a talk on how to choose your internship applications, and so I've put that point in to just say that regardless of where you end up, everyone learns a lot and has a really, really good time. And I've said that already. Good, thank you. And any questions? No? Okay, thank you.
Okay, everyone. Now we have one more speaker before pizza. So we have four registrars / fellows. Now this was deliberate. We felt that consultants are too far out of the process. Registrars and fellows are either studying for the exams or have recently passed their exams. And so, first up we have the physician fellow, Dr. Sara Mgaieth.
So nice to hear about all the internships. It was a long time ago, but I think you just may pertain throughout your whole career, those attributes of an intern and a medical student throughout your career, and it doesn't really change. Your level of responsibility changes, who you are and how you're going to be perceived within your profession. It will be the same. I thought I'd put just a timeline of my training. It's not an unusual pathway for people who've chosen physician training. It might be a bit longer. I started medical school in 2002 in Sydney, and then did my first year of internship. My second year of residency, I started my basic physician training, and that took me to my FRACP exam, which I sat in 2010. I then started advanced training in general medicine, which lasted 4 years, I think. And then decided to do a post-fellowship training. So I got my fellowship in 2013 and then started gastroenterology training, which I completed last year. And now, again, you can never stop training. I'm doing a fellowship in hepatology. So fellowship in this sense is different to fellowship of the Australasian College of Physicians, in that I'm training to become a subspecialist in a subspecialty of internal medicine under hepatology. So you can see through the timeline that it's 13 years. They've been wonderful 13 years. I've moved from Sydney to Melbourne to Darwin, back to Melbourne to Tasmania, and I've really been able to do what I want. I'm going to focus on physician training because I remember I went into medicine having been a clinical trials coordinator in cardiovascular research, working on what was cutting edge drug-eluting stents back there, working on a new antiplatelet called clopidogrel. I worked on that clinical trial, it's pretty extraordinary. And so I went into medicine saying, oh, I'm going to become a cardiologist. So there was really no doubt that I was going to do physician training, but I really didn't understand what it meant. I did my internship, and then in residency I thought, oh, maybe I should find out what I need to do. And so I thought I'd give you a glimpse for those of what it means. So what does it mean to train in internal medicine? There's a lot of specialties in there that you might not think are part of medicine, and when to become involved and how to become involved. So I think this has been covered. Your internship is a general year. Your rotations are mostly pre-selected to complete the requirements of internships. And then the second year, you can start thinking about what's general direction of training and become familiarized with the different colleges, because they're the ones that are going to give you the roadmap to training. Unfortunately, a lot of internship doesn't get you exposed to the non-hospital-based specialties. So you often don't do obs and gynae, you often don't do radiology, radiation oncology, and so it's hard to think about these things because you're not exposed to them. So in terms of physician training, you can actually enroll in the training program your second year. So you need to complete your internship to enroll as a resident year in the College of Physicians. What's changed since I've started my training was that you can't retrospectively count that year into training. So I did my resident year, I still hadn't a clue of what I was embarking on, and then at the end of my resident year said, oh, okay, I'll do physician training. And so they counted that year. So the Royal Australasian College of Physicians looks after anything in adult and pediatric internal medicine. It represents the 14,800 adult physicians and pediatricians in Australia and New Zealand, and it's responsible for accrediting hospitals that are going to provide training, but as well as the assessment of the doctors who are going to complete their training. So they are the ones that make us go through the physician's exam. This is a list that I got off the website, just listing what specialties in adult medicine are under physician training. And that's just to give you an idea, if you're interested in any of these specialties, that's actually the road that you're going to embark on. So I did two of them. I did general medicine, so general and acute care medicine, and then did gastroenterology. So I didn't end up doing cardiology as I embarked on, and that's an important thing, is that you're going to change your mind. You're going to do something that really interests you. You're going to meet somebody that really inspires you, and that might sometimes direct your path. The RACP also looks after chapters of addiction medicine, palliative care medicine, and sexual health medicine. You don't need to sit the physician's exams for these specialties. And then there's faculty training programs, which I hadn't even thought about or didn't even know they existed. Really, it was rehabilitation, public health, and occupation environmental medicine. It's kind of a shame that we train in a hospital setting, and so we get a biased view of what medical training is. And there's a whole world that's not based in a hospital that we often don't get exposed to until later on. That's a very busy slide, but that would summarize my 13 years of training if you want to. The first two would be the ones that would be of interest to you. So the entry requirement to physician training is a medical degree, but you also need to have completed your internship successfully. And then if you're interested in training in medicine, I would suggest contacting the Director of Physician Training at the hospital that you're currently at to get an idea of what path you will be taking. And then it's getting an appointment to a suitable training program in an accredited hospital. So if you're going to embark on it in your second year, so your resident year, there are a lot of positions usually for internal medicine. The bottleneck tends to be on your second year of physician training, so the year where you're starting to study for your exam. And it's the first year where you're a registrar, so you're the general medicine registrar. And then to complete the adult medicine training, you need to complete basic training, which is 36 months. 24 of those are core training. And I've put up here that 3 months at a level 3 teaching hospitals, and that will usually be a rural location. I love being rural, so I went up to Port Macquarie in New South Wales for 9 months, just because it was a beautiful coastal town. And I fulfilled my 12 months in a level 3 teaching hospital. Finishing basic training means that you're allowed to apply for advanced training. You don't actually get your FRACP, you're not a fellow of the College of Physician Training after basic training, but that allows you to one, sit your exam, which I've put here, which is the written exam that you can sit after 24 months of training, and then your clinical exam, which if you've succeeded in your written exam, you can sit that one. And unfortunately, they're only offered once a year, so it makes it a bit tedious. Once you sit your exams, you would have completed 36 months of basic training. You can then apply for an advanced training job in one of those subspecialties that I listed previously. And that you will enter again the match system, which is very much similar to the PMCV match system. A lot of the applications, you almost need a personal assistant to get you through medical training. There's so much administrative and paperwork and applications and deadlines, but you really get used to it. It becomes what you do. So then advanced training is 3 years in general. Cardiology is now added on the 4 year because they had 2 core years. 3 core years and 1 non-core, I think. And no specialty as of yet has an exit exam. So that's very different from anesthetic training or other specialties where you've got an entrance exam and an exit exam. But no specialties yet in internal medicine have exit exams. That's a bonus. Every specialty is going to have an exam. I chose one that only had 2. And then if you still want to train, and a lot of people do a fellowship, you can do a post-fellowship training, which is what I did. I got my fellowship and then went on to do post-fellowship training in gastroenterology. Or you can do what I'm doing now, which is, it's very confusing, the terminology, a fellowship, which is a specialized year in the area of your interest. A lot of trainees do a fellowship year outside of Australia to bring in techniques that aren't available here. So this is the time where you go abroad. I'd done my years abroad and I thought Australia was pretty exotic. Or a lot of people after all this embark on a higher degree and do a PhD or an MD or some kind of research degree. But that's really depending on what you want. I wasn't interested in doing an advanced degree. I'm very much a clinician, so I chose to do a clinical fellowship. It all seems very daunting, and as I was writing the timeline and writing everything up, life goes on, while you're training, and it's important to keep that in mind. You're going to work, everybody else is going to go to work, whether you're in medicine, whether you're in any other profession. I think the beauty with us is that you're continuously learning, you're advancing, you're choosing a path as you go along. It's never going to be boring. There are ups and downs, but on the whole, you turn around and 13 years later you've achieved quite a lot. It's very important to balance life and work. Exam years are terrible years. I don't think there's any way around that. That's why I'm very Muslim. But you know, I've had a lot of fun as well. I managed to live in the Northern Territory 2 years and travel around there. Managed to balance what my career aspirations were with my endeavors as a person. And as I said, all specialties will have exams. What are the benefits of physician training? Well, I happen to love medicine, so it works. I do general medicine. I love the diagnostic dilemma. I still do. I find general medicine almost harder than gastroenterology. Gastroenterology is only one system, and you get it served on a platter. There's also a wide variety of specialties that you can discover as you go. If you sort of have an idea of whether you like this area or not, you can decide as you go, like I did, went in thinking I'm going to become a cardiologist and ended up being a general physician and gastroenterologist. It allowed me to travel and continue my life, and different specialties will provide different lifestyles. And these lifestyle choices are going to change. I'm not the same person I was 13 years ago. I would have probably, if you'd caught me 13 years ago, I was going to be a gung-ho, whatever it was, with a PhD, and I was going to be head of everything. And now I'm a clinician, and I'm quite happy with my choices and where I'm at now. So you do change, and you need to find something that's going to cater to that change. And if I didn't say it enough, there's only 2 exams to sit and you sit them the same year, so it's pretty easy. And there's no exit exams. So that's it for my talk, but I'd be interested to hear what questions you have, if you had any ideas of what physician training is.
Just 2 questions. How does failing an exam affect your position in college, if at all?
Right, so if you fail one of the clinical exams, or if you fail the written exam, then you can't sit the clinical exam. So it's probably better to fail the written, because then you don't have to study for the clinical. But, so if you don't pass one of the exams, then you need to do another year and sit again. It doesn't affect anything. There is a certain number of attempts that you're allowed to do vis-a-vis the college. I can't remember the number, but you're certainly not penalized for not passing an exam. And it's very common at people. I mean, the pass rates are high, but it's a tough exam. A lot of it is stamina. It's not burning out by the time your clinical exam.
And just the difference between a fellow and a consultant, exactly.
Right. So the confusion with fellow is that when you enter the College of Physicians, so you become a fellow of the College of Physicians, then you can practice as a consultant. So I got membership into the college in 2013. I could have opted to practice as a consultant in general medicine. So that's the first definition of fellow, and the second definition of fellow is what I'm doing now, and that's when you're sub-specializing. Most people in their fellowship year are not consultants. So it's just different. It shouldn't, yeah. I don't know why it's called a fellow year. It's very confusing. But you can only put the letters FRACP after your name once you've completed the requirements of a specialty with the college. Behind?
How did you manage family life, moving around?
I think in my case, I moved around because I didn't have family life. I'm from Tunisia, so I came out to Australia alone, and I don't have a family myself, so I continued my adventure. But most people won't have traveled as much as I have. And I know in Victoria, places are less spread out, so doing a rural rotation is actually Ballarat, and it's not very far, whereas a rural rotation, if you're in Queensland or New South Wales, has a different meaning to it. Any other questions?
Thank you, Sarah. That was very insightful. Now we have a 10-minute intercession, and after the intercession, we'll have our next 10-minute shot back here at 7:50.
have your presentation on that at your
Hopefully just do another end of Sheorey. So Trung.
Screen capture. How do I screen capture it? Is that an iPhone? It's a Samsung. Sorry, screen capture for me is just that. We still have it left.
Yeah, hang on. It's still lagging, so now we're coming back. Now he's telling, okay, now he's telling.
So I'm going to move this.
And then it's going to come in the bottom. There we go.
Oh, it's too hard.
Oh. You have to move it down further so that like the actual phone comes into view.
Yes.
Oh, get an iPad next time. Get an iPad so that the whole thing comes out.
I'm recording the screen. Stop recording. Got it. So Trung, I recorded the screen while it was recording, so then I can play the recording of me recording the screen while it was recording me recording. And then we'll get like 20 layers on it. Huh? Plodding along alright now. You get the tires, right? Yeah, Sean mentioned that. Ah, you're going. What seats did you do?
pleasure to introduce Dr. Keith Amarakone. Dr. Keith graduated from the University of Bristol Medical School in the UK in 2004. Prior to that, he did a Bachelor of Science in Bioethics and Masters in Healthcare Ethics and Law from Manchester University. He wrote his first book, Ethics and Human Sciences, published by Elsevier, in his final year of medical school. He then became a dive doc in remote Fijian Island for 3 months and also trained as a skiing instructor in Canada. He co-authored the Oxford Handbook of Clinical Specialties in 2013. This book, it won the highly commended award at the British Medical Association Book Awards 2014. He is now a joint trainee in emergency medicine and paediatrics at RCH. He sat his fellow of Australian College of Emergency Medicine clinical exams last week, having passed his written exams earlier this year with flying colours. Can I welcome Dr. Keith Amarakone.
Hello everyone. I kind of feel like I haven't got much to talk about now. You sort of said it all for me. My task tonight is to talk a little bit about PTD training and a little bit on how to embark down that road and a little bit about how you might start to do that. But before I do that, I just want to get a sense from the people in the audience about who knows what they really want to do when they graduate. Anybody? I have one hand. Oh, 3. Perfect. Any of you 3 want to be a paediatric emergency doctor? So the largest group of you in here, everyone bar those 3 people, probably doesn't really know what they want to do. And that's certainly the group I fell into when I graduated from medical school. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And so I'm going to give a talk sort of in 2 parts. It's going to be a lot fluffier than, I guess, every other talk you're going to get tonight. Because, as Trung said, I did an ethics degree, so fluffy is what we do. The first part will have a little bit of information about those of you who think you might want to go into paediatric emergency medicine. And the second bit of the talk will be for the bigger group of you who don't really know what you're going to do yet. Okay? The second part will be full of some suggestions on how to choose what to do, how life may conspire against you, the choices you make, and how basically everything that you'd like to happen probably won't happen to you. But that's really quite a good thing. Both parts of my talk might be littered with anecdotes, sort of about me really. Not because my career is really special, but because anecdotes make for better talks. You really ought to talk about stuff you know about, and I don't know anyone's career choices really as well as I know my own. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. So long time ago, sometime in the late part of the last century, I started medical school in Bristol, in the United Kingdom. Bristol is a pretty old city. It's steeped in a lot of history, and the medical school there, certainly back in 1997, was pretty old-fashioned too. I did an old traditional course where I had preclinical and clinical years. In your preclinical years, you do the basic sciences. You do anatomy lectures, physiology lectures, pharmacology, immunology, that sort of stuff. And there's very minimal patient contact. It's kind of okay, but it's not really medicine. One of the good things about traditional universities in the UK at that time is they offered something called an intercalated degree. And so an intercalated degree is, after your 2 years of medicine, you got given the opportunity to do a year of other study in something, and then you got a Bachelor of Science out of it. So you essentially got a Bachelor of Science just by doing 1 year's work, because your 2 years of medicine had already counted for medicine. So I thought this was not a bad deal, and I opted to enroll on a psychology BSc. Thought that'd be quite interesting. At the time, I thought, before I went to medical school, I thought I'd like to be a psychiatrist. Seems pretty interesting. Sit around a lot, drink coffee, chat to people. How bad would it be? So I got enrolled, and because I was a tiny bit geeky, I thought, I better go and find a course director before the summer break. Work out if I'm supposed to be doing some pre-reading before this course starts in the 3rd year. And it took me a while, but I managed to get hold of him. And I said, hello, should I be reading something for next year? I'm on the psychology BSc, I'm one of the medical students. And he says to me, yes, I've been meaning to tell the med school, I'm retiring. We're not going to do that. So the same day, I tried to look back to medical school and said, oh, I'm really keen on doing this bachelor's degree, BSc, integrated psychology. It's not going to be available for us. What do you think I should do? And they gave me two options. They said, oh, you can just continue with your medical studies. Go into the third year of medicine, like everybody else, complete that, and be on the way. Or, we have one spot left for you. It's in one of the more unpopular BScs. You can do a BSc in ethics. So, I'd like to say I was drawn to doing BSc in ethics by the ability of helping me distinguish right from wrong, good and evil, understanding the fundamentals of words like truth, justice, utilitarian rage. That's not really what attracted me. It was the fact it was a 2-day week, which meant it was a 5-day weekend. So I thought, I could do that. So every week I had my long weekend from Friday through to Tuesday. And I was supposed to be reading stuff, preparing, thinking. Realistically, I spent a lot of time drinking. The Wetherspoons, which is a big chain of pubs in the UK, does a 99p pint. And it's very easy to take them up on that offer and spend the time setting the world to rights. And so one of my mates, who was my flatmate, he studied theology, so he was possibly one of the 3 people in the university who had less lectures than I did. We spent a long time discussing ideas and living like an art student, which is essentially what I was. And it's a whole world of difference from being a medical student. Okay? And if you get the opportunity to live life like an art student, for a year maybe, or longer if you choose, you should try that. It's different. You are going to work hard for the rest of your life. So living as an art student for a while is great. Unsurprisingly, I loved doing my ethics degree, so much so that I managed to do another year of medical school after the ethics before heading back to do a master's degree in ethics. Now, postgraduate degrees are a bit different to undergraduate degrees, but ethics, some things are very similar. This time I had a 6-day weekend. At the end of my master's degree, I ended back in medical school. I did my 4th and 5th year. But by some bizarre, rejigging of the timetables, I hadn't quite finished my master's thesis when I started my clinical work. So it just so happened in the 4th year of my medical year, I was supposed to be on paediatric attachment somewhere. But I also hadn't finished my master's thesis, and I really had to do that. So through a combination of paediatrics seeming a little boring at the time and a really lax system of monitoring medical student attendance, I managed to bunk most of my kids at attachment whilst I was at med school. And that led to some problems. Namely, I didn't really know how to take a history from a child, examine one, or treat them. So it wasn't the most auspicious start for a career in paediatric emergency medicine. 8 years later, I was in New Zealand and I was working in emergency medicine. I was already in the College of Emergency Medicine. And I kind of thought, I could do this as a career. But from the peds point of view, nothing had really changed. I constantly had this sort of nagging sense of just winging it with peds. So I decided to bite bullet and do a peds rotation, thinking I'm probably not going to enjoy this. Because I remembered a little bit from my student run, and children are a different species altogether. It's true. But the truth is, I just didn't want to be completely mystified every time a child turned up in ED. Paediatrics is 25% of general mixed EDs. Obviously, it's 100% of peds ED. But I didn't want to be mystified every time a child turned up, so I did that rotation. It turns out I really enjoyed it, and I enjoyed it in a way that I was never expecting to really enjoy it. I enjoyed it more than any of my other jobs, and I hadn't, even thought about doing peds at that stage. And this is 8 years or 6 years into my career, so I was quite late to decide this is what I want. Okay, and that's okay. Right? Now, how many people here want to do peds in general? Ask this few. Why do people want to do peds? Like those people just put their hands up. Has anyone got a sense of why you want to do pediatrics?
I want to work. I want to do Indigenous health research.
Yeah.
Paediatrics is a big area.
Okay. Do you know why I like peds? It's because you smile and more in paediatrics than any other job I've ever done. Children are quite smiley, even when they're sick, okay? And if they're smiling at you, you end up smiling back at them, and that makes you happy. So paediatrics is a perfect job to do. Just put a smile. It's really that simple. So I've told this anecdote for a couple of reasons. The first reason is, whatever it is you think you may currently want to do, it may not be the thing you end up doing, okay? So keep your options open. You may not always get your first choice in things, or even your second choice, but the choices that you do get, the opportunities you do get, will often have hidden potential. So take those opportunities, even if you don't know exactly where they're going to lead. You might not really know at this stage what it is you enjoy, because you will change as a person. You might not even know at this stage what you're good at. Right? I think it's important you do some stuff in your career that you're not really sure about. That you think, well, I don't really know whether I like this or not, so I'm going to try it. Okay? Don't be afraid of taking the time to do that either. Right? There is often a pressure on you to choose early what career you want to specialise in. And if you want to do something broad and generalistic like general practice or emergency medicine, if you spent a long time deciding that's the right thing for you, you probably would have done a range of jobs. And all those jobs will help you in ways, immeasurable ways that you may not know. This is the fact bit for you, right? If you do decide to do PEDS emergency medicine, you basically have to do joint training. Joint training in paediatrics and emergency medicine. And you can do it from either direction. So you can either start off as an emergency training, so which is the Australasian College of Emergency Medicine, and then you end up doing some extra PEDS time on that, so 18 months of PEDS emergency, 12 months of PEDS medicine, and a small amount of PEDS intensive care. Or you can come at it from the other direction. You can come at it from the PEDS direction, and you start off as a paediatric training, you do paediatric exams, and then you end up doing 12 months of adult ED to give yourself that other sort of general emergency training. Most people probably only do one set of exams, because exams are terrible. And so most people either do the PEDS exams and then do their time in adult stuff and get what's called a letter from the Joint Training Committee, or they'll do their emergency exams and do their time in paediatric and get a letter. You can do both fellowships, but it's just harder. If you want to work in a children's hospital, it'll probably be good for you, but if you're working at other places where they just want a PEDS emergency doctor, one or other will be fine. So that was the first bit of my talk, which actually went on for a longer than I thought. In the second bit of my talk, if you thought the first bit of my talk was a bit fluffy, you're in for a shock. In the second bit, I want to just reflect a little bit more on the vagaries of chance and the unpredictability of how the choices we make now will impact on our future. I'm going to start with another really long anecdote. When I was 7, I had swimming lessons. I just wasn't a big fan of them. When I started, I wasn't very good, but my parents insisted this was something that was worth knowing. So I persevered. When I was 13, my father went off and worked in Brunei. Now, Brunei is a lovely little country, but there's not that much to do when you're 13. So whilst I was there, I learned to scuba dive on a whim, because it was available and there wasn't much else that I wanted to do. But I wouldn't have been able to do that if I hadn't had swimming lessons when I was younger. The current's pretty strong off the coast of Brunei in places, and so being able to swim was a bit of a prerequisite. I definitely wouldn't have been able to do it if my father hadn't worked in Brunei. The UK is really cold, and there was no way I was going to learn to dive there. The thing is, the fact that I knew how to dive meant that when I got to university, I ended up volunteering for a conservation project out in the Philippines, which was a dive project. And whilst I was there was a dive doctor who made me really interested in dive medicine. So in the UK, we get a period of time where we're allowed to choose what we do in our medical school careers, and I chose to study dive medicine in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt. It has the second busiest hyperbaric chamber in the world for dive-related illnesses. One of the perks of that elective was they gave me time off to do my dive master qualification whilst I was there. So I worked on the boats, I did some dive gliding during the day, and in the evenings I'd go to the chamber and treat dive-related illnesses. I managed to do about 2 years of work after graduating, and then I wanted a career break. And in my career break, I chose to be a dive doctor myself in a tiny little Fijian island. And they were happy to have me because I had my dive master and I'd had some dive experience working with dive medicine. I then ended up working in Christchurch, New Zealand, and the earthquakes in 2011 meant I lost my apartment and pretty much all my possessions. And one day, after a particularly grueling number of aftershocks, I decided to move out of Christchurch. I just thought, I had enough. I didn't know where to go. But I remembered I sort of recently had an advert from Cairns Hospital looking for people to work. And I thought, oh, Cairns, that'd be right. Great Barrier Reef's there. I've always wanted to dive that. I'll go there. And that's how I chose where to go. When I got to Cairns, I met the evening nurse, and within about 2 years we were married. And all of that, well, just saying, none of that wouldn't have happened if I hadn't had lessons on how to swim when I was 7 years old. So it's kind of weird how little we control forces that shape our lives. And that's not the only example. I kind of think at best we are partial spectators to this show that we call our lives. Right? Trung mentioned in 2007 I trained to be a ski instructor in Belgium. And I did it because I was having my career break at the time. And I thought, well, this would be a pretty cheap way of getting skiing lessons for a whole season. I just signed up to an instructor course. I wasn't that good. I was much better by the end of it. But it turned out in 2010, I ended up getting a job in an ICU unit. And when I asked the director what it was about my CV that made him give me the job rather than any number of other applicants, he said he was really keen at skiing and he liked the fact that I had my ski instructors. That was the reason. Now, I don't know whether that's a good reason to give someone a job, but believe me, this sort of stuff happens. In 2000, so it took me about 3 years to do this book. It was, obviously I just updated it. There was an 8th edition, so it was a bit easier than writing my first book. But part of the reason they let me do this is I'd written a book in 2006. That book was one of the crash course guides to that Mosby do. And it was on medical ethics, medical sociology and medical law. And I pitched it to them after doing my ethics degree. I've noticed they had a whole series of student books, but they didn't have one on ethics. I thought, oh look, I'm going to ask them to do this. And they sort of thought about it for a year and they said, well, do you want to write it? And I was like, yeah, sure, I'll do that. But of course, I never would have been able to do that if that psychology degree hadn't been cancelled in the year that I was going to do it, and I'd ended up on an ethics degree. So, you know, that sort of fluke of that, something that was beyond any of my control, was what enabled me to end up writing this book. Okay? And I truly believe that that happens to us all the time. You just need to work out which of those things that are out there are going to be an opportunity for you, without really knowing what exactly they'll materialise into. If you ask what we can learn from these anecdotes, these small stories in my life, this is what I draw from them. If you don't know what you want to do yet, just try lots of things. If you do know what you want to do, try some other things just in case. Seize as many opportunities that come your way because you don't know which ones are going to be important, and recognise that almost everything you take for granted now could be different. The last point is probably the most important. If you accept it, you'll realise that planning your career is at best a calculated gamble. Right now, I'm really happy being an emergency medicine trainee. But if I'm honest, I reckon I'd be pretty happy as an adult emergency trainee too. I'd be pretty happy as an anaesthetic trainee or an ICU trainee. I'm even pretty sure that I'd be happy as an ethicist or a dive master, a lawyer or a ski instructor. Last week, I sat my fellowship exam in emergency medicine, but I know my learning in emergency medicine is nowhere near finished, and my career choices are nowhere near all made yet. There are still dozens of things I'd like to do before I settle down and enjoy it for good. So my concluding thought is this: it's great to want to have a happy and fulfilling career. Who wouldn't want those things? But it's insufficient to simply make good careers choices. You also need to make some good life choices. Medicine will be a large part of your life, but don't make it the whole of your life. Travel, take time to work overseas, do some non-medical things. Take jobs because they sound challenging, not because they're easy. Expand your interests and your mind by trying the things you're not used to. Not only will you be a better doctor, you might also become a better person. so if anyone has any specific questions, I'll try and answer them. About PEDS, emergency or emergency in general. Good. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief. That was fantastic. Okay, now we're back on. Next speaker, we have Dr. Jordon Jones. Dr. Jones graduated from medical school in Queensland in 2010. His internship and surgical residency at RMH. He's now a neurosurgical registrar at RMH for the last 2.5 years. He's also recently become a father. And he's on call tonight, so if he happens to leave halfway, that's okay.
So unfortunately I am on call tonight, but Trung has kindly accepted to be the neurosurgical registrar at the Royal Melbourne Hospital. If any calls, Trung, just order a CT brain, that's all we've got. So my name's Jordon, I'm one of the neurosurgical registrars at the Royal Melbourne Hospital. I've been there for the last 2.5 years. Before that I did 3 months of general surgical registrar. And unlike some of the other speakers here tonight, I'm only at the beginning of my training, so I've only recently gone through the selection process, but I've got a lot of experience through that, but apart from that, we'll have to keep going. So why do surgery? Well, so this was me this morning before our cases. Unfortunately, I don't share quite the same attributes as Ray from Dr. 90201 208. My phone is broken, it has been broken for the last 6 months, so I haven't had enough money to fix that yet. Now, like what Keith talked about, and unlike his talk, mine will be short, snappy, right to the point. The decision to do surgery is a very personal question, and I think often you get pushed into a career from your experience and what you find interesting, and also because of the people you meet and who inspire you to do certain things. For me, surgery was all about theatre, and if you don't like theatre, don't do surgery. Once you walk into the operating rooms and you know that's where you're meant to be, you like the technicality of it, the anatomy. As soon as all that happened to me, I knew I wanted to be a surgeon, and that happened right in internship. Also, quite like the decision making in surgery. Now, if you look at the screen on the top left, this was a young guy who jumped out of a taxi when he was meant to be paying his fee. Came in unconscious. He got a acute subdural on that side. A lot of midline shift. Decision was quite easy. Had to take him to theatre, take out the hematoma. And this happened just before Christmas. Now, immediately after the operation, you check the pupils as you do in all surgery or neurosurgery, and his left pupil, so on the other side, was blown. And at that time, you need to make a split decision whether or not you go straight back to theatre and reopen on the same side, or you take him down for a scan to see what's going on. And we decided to take him down for a scan and see what's going on. As you can see there, he's got an extra dural on the other side, and if we took him, went back to theatre straight away, we wouldn't be able to get that extra dural out, because it was quite posterior, and it was probably from the posterior branch of the middle artery. So without... Was that funny? So these sorts of decisions can sometimes be easier, they can sometimes be difficult. When you look at a scan in February of this year, one of the things in surgery that I like, you get to see both on the scan what you've done, but also the patients themselves, and it's very rewarding. And he walked into our clinic, and he was well, he was alone back at home, about to go back to work. It was very fascinating because I thought he was actually going to die. The other thing about surgery for me is that you find these people that inspire you. You look at the screen in the middle there, and you watch Professor K try and tackle these formidable tumours down in his got bilateral cerebral tumours. And you think, how the God could he operate on that? The brainstem's right there, it's a sliver. But somehow he managed to take them both out, and the patient did very well. So there's these mentors and peers that you meet throughout your training and your career, and they really push you to do things in your career as well. And something else I liked about surgery, there was no long ward-rounds and there was no long clinics. So I think a few people have talked about this already, the pathway from internship to surgical career. In general, you study internship, everyone does similar sort of rotations. You'll probably get one rotation in surgery, sometimes two if you're lucky. And then after that, you can decide to be a surgical resident. And in that time, you start to do more specialised surgical training. So you can do plastics, orthopaedics, neurosurgery. You can also take some time off to do other things as well. So I spent 3 months during my surgical residency in Cambodia doing some volunteer work in the clinic there. And that was really, really enjoyable. It was a good break. And once you pass on to the surgical residency, you can be 2, 3, 4 years, and you become an unaccredited registrar, where you get to have more responsibilities, learn some surgical techniques. And finally, after you've gone through the training, the application process to become an accredited registrar. And we'll talk a little bit more about the training processes a bit further on. And once you've done your accredited training registrar work, you can become a fellow, and you can often go overseas to do a fellowship. You can do it in Australia. And this is when you start to sub-specialise, because a lot of the major hospitals now, these days, will employ you, not no employ you. It'd be more favourable to them if you've got some subspecialty training. So for me at the moment, working across the road, this is my typical day. So it's about 6 o'clock ward round, we hand over, we're in theatre by about 8 o'clock. We finish our theatre cases at 5:30, 6 o'clock, sometimes a bit earlier, sometimes a bit later. Do an evening ward round, look at the sick patients, look at ICU. And then you've got to prepare for tomorrow's cases. You don't want to know what you don't. You want to make sure you know what you're doing the next day. You have to leave work by about 8 o'clock. Sometimes a bit earlier, sometimes a bit later. And on Saturdays and on the weekend, you do a ward round on Saturday. You have teaching, journal clubs, unit meetings, and then there's the opportunity to do private assisting. So I do about 3 Saturdays every month in private assisting. Just try to think about what sort of things I dealt with in the last month or so as a registrar. These are some of the interesting cases that I had. There was a young girl with an extradural on that side there, came in unconscious, and then after we took it out, she woke up and wanted to go home. There's these 2 self-inflicted injuries. A gentleman who shot himself in the face and has got this bullet fragment right near his basal artery in his pons. And then there was a guy who shot himself with a nail gun, with an 8cm nail gun that was wedged inside his brain that we took out. And then there was this subarachnoid hemorrhage from a ruptured aneurysm. And the interesting thing about aneurysm surgery is they either live or they die. They rupture and they can bleed out to you right in front of you. It's really interesting stuff. It's not all emergency stuff, there's a lot of tumours that I have to deal with. And also the thing about surgery that I like, there's a lot of new interventions going. There's the thing that looks like it should be on transformers is the brain lab system that we use. We navigate exactly where we are. On the top right, there's the glowing brain tumour, so you give someone 5-ALA a couple of hours before their operation. And it glows up under fluorescent light, and that pink stuff is tumour cells. And then the case that we did yesterday, in the weight training, I mean, this is one of the most fascinating things. You can actually stimulate the brain to stop it from working. So they're awake while you're doing it, you ask them to do certain things, and if you stimulate it, it'll arrest for their speech. And in this particular case, it was a speech arrest that we were doing yesterday. So in general, part of the training program, so everything is available on the College of Surgeons website, and that's the website there. There are 9 training schemes. On average, they last 5 to 6 years, some a bit longer, some a bit shorter. And there's hospital, state, and national programs. And by this, I mean, for example, in hospitals for like general surgery, so You apply to the national college and you're in competition with other people from your state, and then you ultimately apply to different hospital systems around, say, Victoria or Melbourne, so Melbourne, Austin, whatever. And you do all your training in that period, in that place. And you often spend a lot of time in rural, so on average they spend about 12 to 18 months rural. Then there's state programs like orthopedics, so you again apply to the National Orthopedic Association, and you spend your training through the different hospitals in Victoria. And then there's national programs like neurosurgery, where you spend your 6 years in every different state possible in New Zealand. And they're starting to break down the training processes like neurosurgery here into basic, intermediate and advanced training. And this can take various years. So the basic training for neurosurgery is 1 to 2 years, the intermediate is 3 to 4 years, and the advanced training is 1 to 2 years. And as you go through, there's a whole bunch of things you need to do to progress. The first theory is your logbook, so you need to get a certain number of operations before you can progress as a primary and an assistant. You need to be able to do some certain competencies, which could include clinical stuff, but also getting signed off for certain theatre cases. You'll attend training seminars, so for neurosurgery you need to attend 6, basic and intermediate. And then there's a research requirement as well. Now they used to do a whole research year in neurosurgery, but they've recently stopped that. You still have to do a research program or project and present at a national conference during the training, and that's before the advanced training. And then there's courses which I'm sure you've all heard about, such as EMST and CLEAR course, which you need to do before you can progress. In general, when you're applying for the SET program, there are certain requirements that most of you all have. It's really eligibility criteria that you need to look at the college website for a certain specialty. And they often include rotations. For example, in general surgery, you need to do 6 months of general surgery rotations. In neurosurgery, 6 months as well. But you also need to do a critical care or an ICU, which is important for when you're thinking about your rotations in your surgical residency. There are certain competencies that you need now, and this is to prevent people from applying straight out of residency as a second-year resident. So in general surgery, you need to be able to do a laparoscopic appendectomy prior to applying to the program. In neurosurgery, you need to be able to do an EVD. So certain competencies that you need as a basic trainee that you should be able to do. And they've introduced the general surgical science exam as a requirement in 2017 for a lot of the rotations as well. So it used to be an old training scheme where there was basic surgical training, advanced surgical training, and everyone did the basic surgical training. And at the end of that, you did an exam, and how you run the exam, you got your advanced training. Now everyone has to do this general surgical science exam, which I'll talk about in just a moment, and what it entails. So specifically, so there's 8 spots for neurosurgery nationally. In 2014, there was 70 applicants, and to this year there was 58. Victoria, for general surgery, there was 20 spots, and orthopedics there was 8 in Victoria. There was a bit more nationally. I think there was about 50 orthopedic national spots. In general, the application process involves your CV, your references, and your interview. I guess what you can see there is the CV is not actually worth that much. What's more important is your references and your interview. In neurosurgery, they've introduced this anatomy exam that you have to pass to be able to progress. And every mark you get over passing is almost part of 35% that's worth the anatomy exam. So know your anatomy. In general, there's 5 exams you need to do before you can qualify as a surgeon. So everyone does the general surgical science exam in their first year now. The next year, you'll do that before you apply. For those who get onto the program, then you have to do a clinical exam, which is generally just like your Year 12 OSCEs. Pretty straightforward. I don't think they've heard of anyone failing that. And then there's a surgical specific exam where people have more trouble with. And each surgical specialty has their own anatomy and physiology exam that they do in their first year. And if you get through your training by getting through your requirements, then you have to do your fellowship exam. This involves a written exam over 2 days and an oral viva over 2 days as well. And this has about a 50% pass rate in general, certainly for neurosurgery as well. We're just about to go through that. So sometimes you can feel a bit like this. There's a lot of options going around. Certainly when I was in internship, I wanted to do orthopedics. But I failed. I obviously didn't go to the strip clubs enough to get through. But you're going to change your mind. I think it's important to keep an open mind on what you want to do. That's enough looking at that. So this, I was asked to put a slide on work-life balance. Now this is a difficult question. 13 weeks ago I had my son, and yesterday was his mum's first Mother's Day, and I spent the whole day doing a weight craniotomy and 2 other craniotomies. I didn't get home till 9 o'clock. Surgery's hard, the training is hard, it's competitive, there's not enough spots, and you know, at the end of the day something's going to have to be compromised. I'm not really sure whether there's anyone has a good work-life balance in surgery, but you can try. In terms of tips on what to do if you want to do surgery, well, you should start thinking about it before your internship, because each certain where you apply to do your internship is different. If you want to do neurosurgery, one of the places to apply at the Royal Melbourne Hospital is a big neurosurgery unit, and you can often get jobs in the neurosurgery unit there a bit more easier because they tend to employ people that they know and have gone through the surgical resident before you get onto as an unaccredited registrar. But I think things that stand out is you want to be a good intern, you want to be a good resident. And that's just being organised, all the things that Phil spoke about before. Being a good intern and a good resident stands out. And we talk to the consultants, and the consultants ask us about how their residents and interns are going. And we give their feedback, and they're more inclined to employ people as unaccredited registrars, which you all need to do before getting on a program. If you're a good intern and a good resident and have good medical knowledge. It's important to make contact with the appropriate people initially. So if you want to do neurosurgery, speak to Kate Drummond, because they'll encourage you and be supportive of you on your way. You need to know the eligibility requirements of your specialty. As a registrar this year couldn't apply this year because he didn't do his ICU training and only realised that it was a requirement too late, so you have another year of not being able to apply for the program. The Diploma of Surgical Anatomy, if you asked me 3 years ago, I said this would have been a must, but this is becoming less and less weighty on your CV. So it's not, it's only worth 0.5 marks in the neurosurgery application. In research, again, research is becoming less and less part of your CV now. So you can do 2 case reports and get your full maximal marks on research on your CV for neurosurgery. So it's not as important as it once used to be. And that's all I have. Yes. For the training, yeah.
So to give you some idea of how to do competency-based assessments and get some of that stuff started, present as a package as part of your application, I suppose, and to make sure you're working on the right skills. What do you think of it, and also what have you been hearing about it?
Yeah. Okay, so, I think it's an interesting idea. I think you need to have a certain level of competencies before you can apply into your successful training. And as you go on, there's this, there's certain requirements that you have to keep doing. That part of the syllabus that the set trainings that the college system has released. Well, I think you just have to do what the college tells you to do. It's a game, unfortunately. You have to play the game. So being on the training program, you're an accredited registrar, so it counts your years that you're doing the training count. Because college surgeons can tell you where to go with training. That's when you have to do the competencies as well. So the HMO doing neurosurgery has less responsibility, and they're basically surgical residents. An unaccredited registrar, you do exactly what the accredited registrars would do. So you go to theatre, learn how to do surgery, off the ward, take the on-call photo. And invariably, you'll all need to do surgery 1 to 2 years of unaccredited registrar work before you'll get accepted onto the program. Sometimes it takes longer. There was a guy who got on last year, 7 years as an unaccredited registrar.
Dr. Niroshe Amarasekera is a GP and medical educator. She works 3 days a week in clinical practice and 1 day a week as a medical educator. She has special interest in women's health and medical education. She currently sits on the WAC GP Victorian Faculty Board and is a WAC GP examiner. She is currently working towards a Masters in Health Professional Education.
Thank you, Trung. I'm glad I'm going after Jordon. Can you all hear me? Yeah, that's good. Because I'm going to make GP look really attractive. So I've labelled my talk, "Why Not Just a GP?" And the main reason I did that was because when I did internship, I really struggled with the decision to make a career choice, and GP was high on my list, but one of the reasons that I struggled with it was I didn't want to be just a GP, and despite having a big interest in it, I found that it took me 3 years to actually apply for general practice training. I think one of the big hesitations in doing general practice was I didn't want to go into a training program that was deemed less superior, mainly by me. I didn't also want to do coughs and colds all day. I felt that if I didn't specialise in anything, that it was a blow to my ego. But again, that was a lot to do with me. So in the next 10 to 15 minutes, I'm going to focus a little bit on why I think general practice is a great career. I enjoy being a GP every day. And then the second part, I'm going to talk about how to actually get into the training program. So I'm going to start the presentation with just 2 quotes. The physician should not treat the disease, but the patient who is suffering from it. Maimonides was a Jewish philosopher and one of the great Torah scholars, and he was a physician in the Middle Ages. So that was one of his quotes. It's far more important to know what person the disease has than what disease the person has. And I think these 2 quotes really reflect the sentiment of being a GP. It's really about the person and not so much about the disease. So in preparing for my talk, I thought I'd go through my appointment book and have a look at what I actually saw last week in my clinic. And these were some of the things that I actually saw. So, you know, thinking that it was all about coughs and colds was really one of the myths that I had created. So I saw a gentleman who was on rivaroxaban and had self-ceased it, and came in with leg cramps, and on ultrasound had a partial occlusion of one of his veins, and I had to restart rivaroxaban and explain to him that with factor V laden he probably needed to be on it for the rest of his life, which was what the specialist said as well. I saw a lady with right-sided pneumonia clinically, which was demonstrated on chest x-ray as well, and started them on antibiotics. Diagnosed unexpected pregnancy in a 25-year-old who suffered with anxiety and depression and had to counsel her on that. There was a gentleman who came in with painless hematuria, 2 episodes of painless hematuria, who I sent off for tests, but possibly has a urological malignancy and needs cystoscopy. I saw a new patient who came in with epigastric pain, been on a proton pump inhibitor and weight loss, and had a pancreatic mass on ultrasound, so most likely a pancreatic malignancy. I did see a cold, but that was a victim of domestic violence, and that was actually her ticket into the consultation. And we spent probably around 2 or 3 minutes on the cold, and most of that consultation, about 20 minutes on her partner and the abusive situation that she was in. So really it's not all coughs and colds, and that was just to illustrate that, you know, this is in metropolitan Melbourne, and this is really in 3 days because that's all I do in general practice every week. And imagine what you'd see in the country. I worked as a Paediatric in Lakes Entrance, beautiful town, and you know, seeing lots of pathology and being able to manage lots of things was what really got me started in general practice. I did a Paediatric rotation as a resident through hospital. So there's lots of variety in general practice and lots of undifferentiated illnesses. The other really important reasons that I chose general practice was lifestyle. Being able to choose the hours that I work, choose the days that I work, and I can work as much as I want, or I can work as little as I want. And again, you know, depending on what life throws at you, you can determine your hours. Working anywhere, working in the city, in the country, you know, having a portable career where you can go with your partner or vice versa. So these pictures are really just to illustrate and attract general practice. So you could go horse riding, and you could have a dog. I was just lamenting on the fact that Jordon's work started at 6 a.m. and finished at 8 p.m. and you know, to have something like this to come home to is really quite nice, and she probably wouldn't tolerate a 6 a.m. to an 8 p.m. day. So general practice would really suit dogs. The other really important thing, or the thing that I love about general practice, is the continuity of care. You're really their doctor throughout their whole life. And initially, I think a lot of junior doctors and registrars don't see this, but having been at a practice now for nearly 3 years, you know, I'm getting a lot of patients from pregnancy and then seeing their newborns and seeing the children grow up, and then also being able to help them through, you know, the pleasant teenage years. And then once they pass that, helping them in the middle ages, through menopause, through midlife crises, So really being with the person throughout their whole life and, knowing everything, knowing the whole patient. The other important thing that I like about GP is that you get to specialise if you want to in an area that you're interested in. So during my training I did 6 months of obstetrics and gynecology and I did a DIPOS. And I do shared care, so that means that I see low risk antenatal women. So they come to me for their antenatal clinic appointments and go to the hospital twice during their antenatal time. And I really quite enjoy that. I also do a fair bit of women's health and contraception as well, and that's a specialty area that I really enjoy. So you could do special skills in anything really. You could do special skills in psychiatry and mental health, and there's lots of GPs that work in headspace or just even have their own practice of mental health. You could do shared antenatal care or GP obstetrics, particularly in rural areas. You could do forensic medicine, you could do family planning, you could do aged care. And I'm sorry, Jordon, that's meant to be a surgeon. But you could do some special surgical skills, particularly with skin and removal of skin lesions. So the next bit I'm going to talk about is the actual training pathway. So it's slightly different from the other training pathways in that with the others you really apply to a college to train, whereas in GP training there's two bodies. So there's the colleges of general practice, there's the Royal Australian College of General Practitioners or the RACGP, and there's the Australian College of Rural and Remote Medicine or ACRM. These two colleges set the standards for training practices and providers and also set the exams and assessments. You don't apply to the colleges when you go into general practice training. What you do apply to is the AGPT, the Australian General Practice Training Body. And that's a body that oversees general practice training in Australia. And you then become a part of a regional training provider, and this depends on which region you train in. So in metropolitan Melbourne, the regional training provider is Victorian Metropolitan Alliance. They're the ones that are responsible for overseeing your training and delivering the curriculum and making sure that the standards set by the RACGP is attained. So at the end of completion of training and after you've sat the exam, then you get general practice fellowship. So I'll go into a little bit more detail about the actual fellowship. So there's two pathways. There's the general pathway or the rural pathway. And you can apply to either of these pathways or both of these pathways first year after your internship. So the requirement is that you need general registration, which obviously means that you have medicine, surgical and emergency rotations under your belt. The first year of the training program is 12 months in hospital. And the 12 months in hospital depends on whether you're doing the rural and remote medicine pathway or the general pathway. If it's the general pathway, the requirements are paediatrics and 3 other rotations. If it's a rural and remote medicine pathway, you need paediatrics, obstetrics and gynae and anaesthetics. Then the second 2 years are spent in general practice, and if you're doing the general pathway or the FRACGP, you can sit the exams and get your fellowship. For the fellowship of Australian College of Remote and Rural Medicine pathway, you need 12 extra months doing advanced specialised training, and they will be in anaesthetics, emergency medicine, obstetrics, so that you're able to practice rurally and remotely. So these are really the rotations that you need during your internship and also in your second year of training. So when you apply to training, what happens is you apply to the national body, which is the AGPT. You then need to complete two things. One is the online situational judgment test, which is done at a national testing centre. And then the second one is the face-to-face multi-mini interviews. Once you've completed these two, you then get ranked. Once the ranking is done, you get to pick which area and which training provider you train with. So it becomes a little bit complicated, but the whole of Australia is divided into different regional training providers. Some are more popular than others. For example, the one in metropolitan Melbourne is quite popular, and most of it is because of geography. Most people want to train in Melbourne, but some of it is because of the type of training that's provided. So if we just look at Victoria, there's 4 training providers, and depending on which area you want to train in, you apply to that training provider, and depending on the ranking that you get at the mini multi-interview and the online situational judgment test, you will be ranked and you can choose which one to go to. So in 2016 though, Victoria will be divided just into 2 training providers, the Western and Eastern region. Don't think you have to worry too much about this right now, but it's good to know that it's actually region-based rather than, rather than other colleges where it's hospital-based. So at the end of my 3 years in hospital, my choices look like this. So I ended up doing general practice, and I love general practice. I have lots of respect for my specialist colleagues because I could never know the depth of knowledge that they have in their niche area, but I love dealing with uncertainty. I love dealing with undifferentiated illnesses that I have to work out, the puzzle. So I really hope that general practice is something that you would consider. It's a pity that we don't have the PGPP positions anymore, which was a position that you could go from hospital and try general practice before you committed, a bit like a hospital paediatric rotation. But if you are interested, I do urge you to join the GPSN, General Practice Students Network, which offer the Going Places Network as well, which offer free networking and educational lunches and dinners. They come to your hospital. There's also a GP ambassador at your local hospital that can provide links and mentorships and information sessions about how to apply for general practice. So I'm going to leave you with a picture of my dog, and that was going to be the slide for questions, not about the dog, about general practice. Yes.
So, we all kind of know that working in a hospital, you're very much in a team environment. How do you feel that compares to working in a general practice situation?
I think it can get lonely, and I do miss the hospital setting where it's in a team environment, you make the decisions together, and you often sit down and have lunch. But I think it really depends on what practice you choose and the colleagues that you have around you. So, doing the educational role, I find that I will often be able to meet with other educators who are also GPs and debrief. I also get to see registrars and talk about their issues as well. So teaching is a very interactive environment. Certain practices will have lunch together almost every day. Like I know of a practice in East Bentley that will close for lunch and we'll have lunch together, all the GPs. So it's just about finding a practice, and I have to say that probably occurs more in country practice than in metropolitan Melbourne, just because we tend to have busier practices and lots of people just want to do 4-hour session and go off and pick up their kids or whatever. But yeah, I think you can get something very similar depending on the practice that you work at. Any other questions? Okay.
Okay. So we have one more speaker, and I'm just going to take 2 minutes to show you guys something really cool. So, the final speaker needs no introduction. I know him as the Vice President of Ummss last year, but besides the Vice President of Ummss, Joe is a pharmacist. After graduating in pharmacy, he was awarded the Pharmacy Society of Australia Prize for Graduate of the Year. He has been the convener of the MD Student Conference for the past 4 consecutive years. He was National Chair of GPSN. He was the founding president of the Interprofessional Education and Practice IPAC Student Council. He was awarded the Dean's Prize for the most all-round medical student. He's also a medical officer in the Royal Australian Air Force. And in his spare time, while studying his medical degree, he also studied a Master of Public Health and Master of Health Management online at UNSW. So please welcome Dr. Monteith.
Thanks, Trung. Just let him know I did write that. I don't know where you grabbed that from. But I'm just Joe. Like, I've met most of you over the last few years. Hands up MD1s. Well, welcome, I haven't met you. MD2s, MD3s, MD4s, good applications. Find it? You guys are so keen. So, I thought we'd do a quick talk about building your CV. And this is really just a few of my opinions that I've sort of come across. In med school, I tried everything and got involved in everything. I don't necessarily recommend that because, you know, to be honest, I spent 2 or 3 months sleeping every 2 days in 4th year. That wasn't fun. But I'll tell you a few of the tricks that I've learned along the way. And thank you, Ummss, for inviting me back. I'm really old being invited back to do these speeches. So where am I at the moment? So I'm a St. V's intern. Before I go into that, really exciting, talking about GPs before, I applied to GP last month. So I'm pretty excited about that. Although now that I'm actually on my PEDS term, I'm wondering if I want to be a paediatrician. So I won't tell GPSN that, it's a bit awkward. I know that I didn't want to do surgery. I passed out far too often in surgery. I was always that student that passed out and took out the surgical tray. That is not how you make friends. And so of course at St. Vincent's they put me on surgical nights to start off with. That was pretty much hell on earth for me. I actually passed out on the ward round. I wasn't even looking at anything gross. Anyways, and then so that was only for 2 weeks, thank God. Then I did anaesthetics as the rest of that rotation was phenomenal rotation as an intern. By the end of it, I was independently doing art lines, central lines, spinals, just things that you see doctors doing that you always kind of want to get involved in. But as an intern, they let you do it at St. V's. I'm doing gen med and short stay at the Royal Children's at the moment. I'll be there for another few weeks. So if I cough throughout this, pretty sure one of the little bronchiolitis kids is like coughing my face and got me sick. Very common occurrence, either that or vomit or poo. I head over gen med back at St. V's, and then I'm out in gen surge in Swan Hill. God. But they only employ interns 4 days a week. So every single week I've got a 3-day weekend. So that's one of the reasons why I chose Swan Hill, and that's the same thing with ED as well. You're employed 4 days a week, which is great. It looks like I'm at RCH next year, doing a PEDS year. And a couple other things that I've stayed involved in, a bit of research this year, some committees, a social life, which I've started exploring again, which is great. And I've actually lost my phone. So I forgot to tell everyone, I've lost my iPhone. It's the one with the smashed screen, because of my social life. But I'm sure it's here somewhere. But and also I've got involved in sport this year, so I'm playing water polo and a few other swim training type things this year, which has been really great. Now, this talk is more about building, having a think about a good CV. That's very different, and listening to some of the speakers, I'm echoing some of the things that they've said. Building a good CV is different to being a good medical student, which is different to being a good intern, which is different to being a good doctor. So I'm going to focus on some CV things, and I'll touch on about being a good medical student at the very end. So what is a CV? Yes. Thank you. So what is a CV? So the pronunciation, PMCV, I don't know how to say those things. Basically, it's a piece of paper that you basically need to use to stand out. You use it in your internship, you use it in your residency, your training programs, local positions, grants, fellowships, consultant positions. So you use it almost every single year. Who's got an up-to-date CV right now? I hope the majority MD4s, because your applications are due. Good. So I'm really true. So for Victoria, your CV is standardised, which I think is really great. There's common headings across all of them. Probably the most important point, one of the most important points I want to make is that it's really a working document. Please, please, please keep your CV up to date. Even if you're in biomed, get your CV ready. You probably want to leave that. You're at this. So make sure that you update your CV, every few months with the little bits and pieces that you do throughout medical school, whether that be electives, rotations, volunteering work, and jot down a couple of points under those activities so you remember them. It'll make your life a lot easier once you get to MD4. Do you guys, MD4s, do you think that's a really good idea? Yeah. Keep an up-to-date CV throughout each of your years as a medical student. Really important. Now the crux of your CV. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this. Contact details, well, it's pretty easy. Education and qualifications. So all of you guys are postgrads. You're all postgrads, so you've got your qualifications and you'll have your postgrad stuff soon. Keep a record of your clinical placement. So not everyone, you don't have much say in where you go. You've got some preferences. But also in terms of your electives and anything else you do in terms of the medical world, make sure you keep a record of that. Employment history. So I think there's a few areas within your CV that you can really shine. One of which is paid employment. A lot of medical students don't or haven't worked in a paid employment situation. And I think recruiters really look highly upon paid employment because you can show that you've held down a job and you know what's the responsibility that's associated with a paid position. Volunteering history, there are so many opportunities within medical school that you volunteer and so many of you put up your hands for so many things. Please keep a record of all of those. When you're looking at, I spoke I think last year to the MD1s, when you're looking at some of the stuff that you want to get involved in, always have to think about what you want to do in the future and what interests you. Do not put your hand up for everything that you can, like that's stupid. Have an interest and really follow that interest through sort of medical students. I know that will change, as your medical studies, that will change. But have an idea, don't just go for everything, because that's really noticeable on your CV. Achievements and awards, well, you can't really do anything about that, like it just happens, I think. Try hard, research publications and presentations. I hesitate whether to put this on here or not, but I did decide to put it on here. It's becoming increasingly important for you to get involved in public speaking, in leadership activities, in publications and in research. Not only when you're applying to training programs, but as a junior doctor and even as an intern. It is expected that you have research skills under your belt as a junior doctor. And if you can have some publications and presentations associated with that, I highly recommend it. It's really not difficult to get involved in research. It can be like quality assurance or quality improvement programs. So there are little things that you're doing, day-to-day activities that you can try and gather some results. Start making some contacts with your MD3s and 4 colleagues and your interns. Have a think about what type of research they did throughout their medical student days. So I do recommend that you have a think about research. Presentations even like this, or for like GPSN, or for the for Outlook, so the Rural Health Club, presentations you get involved in with that, those types of committees, you can actually put on your CV as well. So they're a little bit of extra things you can sort of pump up your CV with. But like I said, it's becoming an increasingly important aspect of your CV. Leadership roles and extracurricular activities. Yeah, leadership roles in a way. As a doctor, you are a leader of a team. You automatically assume that position. I noticed myself, I say I'm just an intern. But you know, the allied health and the nursing staff and medico-legally, you're responsible for the things you're putting your name to. So you automatically assume you automatically assume a leadership position whether you like it or not. So get some experience in it. Just as important as leadership roles is actually being a part of a team. To be an effective intern, you have to be a great team member, and so being involved in any sorts of teams is really important. Personal interests are really, really important. Like one of the first speakers spoke about, he was interested in skiing, I think, and he got a job because of that. So it is actually really important to have a life outside of medicine, but it's also really noticed when you go to apply for jobs. Along the way, I'll talk about burning bridges in just a second. I don't recommend that. But make sure that you make some clinical contacts. So that people, particularly this is for MD3s, 4s, how to think about it as an MD1 and 2, people that have watched you clinically and become very important for you once you're applying for jobs, that you're able to use them as clinical references. It's particularly important in Victoria. The way I went about that is that at the end of the rotation, I had a really good clinical experience with a particular clinician. So mine was my GP and also my obstetrician as a med student. At the end of the rotation, I said, I've got job applications next year. Would it be appropriate for me to ask you to be a clinical reference for that? And I think you should flag it with them fairly early, so you're not emailing them 18 months down the track being like, hey, you remember me? Give me a job. So make sure you make those contacts early on. And also the non-clinical referees are also important for some health services as well. So from my experience, having spoken with a few HR recruiters now across a few different fields, what are people looking for? Unfortunately, grades. Grades are a really easy way for health services to differentiate people or med students from one another. Unfortunately, a lot of our CVs become very similar, and so grades is really an objective way to differentiate us. So you do have to do well as a med, or you have to give it your all as a med student. So please make grades a focus at least. A well-rounded student is really important, particularly when you're applying as an intern. So have your sort of experience within rural, within different health services, with your own personal interests, just being well-rounded. Get some experience, so that's not only with medicine, as already mentioned, paid employment or volunteer type employment, really important. Have a bit of personality, and it's a bit hard to show personality on a standardised CV, although you have to put a photo. It's one way to show a bit of personality. Don't put anything too with that. Anyways, you have to show through personal interests, but also in your interviews for different positions, you can show some personality. Being recommended, that's partly got to do with your references, but also on your ward rounds, as one of the other speakers said earlier, people talk, so that the experiences that you have, or the people that you actually are working with as med students, so the interns, the other residents, the registrars, they all talk, and they do talk to the consultants. So make sure that you show interest in what you're doing, and you give things a go. That's probably the two most important points of being recommended. Have a think about transferable skills, and that they usually ask for skills on a CV, and have a think about transferable skills of a good intern. So like I've already mentioned, have some knowledge, be a team player, be involved, have some leadership skills and some research. And at the end of the day, this standardised CV that PMCV is doing, a lot of the recruiters, so in HR, are basically making sure that all of those boxes are filled. So you've got something at least in each of those boxes. And the boxes are really these headings here. So make sure that you have to think about those at least. Now, my opinion, so I've only got a couple. I've got a few actually. But I only got a couple on this. So this is very military of me, so I do have a military background. Make sure you have a 5-year plan. And that's involving family. So when do you want to have kids? When you want to get in a relationship, if you want to. Have a think about your career. You don't have to know what you want to get training in, but if you know you want to be a surgeon, I don't want to be a surgeon. It's just not for me. Make sure you have all of those prerequisites as that we've spoken about. There are certain things you need to tick to get into that training program, and you may spend up to 7 years trying to get in because you didn't have that 5-year plan 5 years ago, if that makes sense. Just have a think about the college requirements. Have a think about when you want to do some volunteering. So I'm going to Cambodia at the end of the year and volunteering for a couple of months. Have a think when you're going to do that, and have a think about your research interests. So you don't have to have a hard and fast 5-year plan like I will be a consultant GP. That's a thing in 5 years' time. But you have to have an idea of sort of where your career is heading, where your family is heading. Do not underestimate the power and influence of networking. A lot of jobs are given to people based on the people that they know, and hopefully because it means they're a good doctor and that people are recommending them. It is really important. So events like this, on social media, like at Twitter, at conferences, at meetings, just always put your best foot forward and chat with people. It's really, really important, and it's led to some of the most interesting things that I've done. It's just from me hanging around, really. So like back in first year getting involved in GPSN, I think they said a question at a pizza lunch. They're like, if anyone's standing up at the end of this, you're in the committee. And they asked everyone to sit down, and I wasn't paying attention. And I was still standing, and so they made me executive officer, which, anyways. And so that led to me getting involved in GPSN as chair for Melbourne, and then as national chair of the organisation. We had 17,000 members or so in terms of the whole organisation, which means I met with John Monteith a lot, and last week John Monteith called me up and asked me to review one of his chapters in his book. And so that was really just me hanging around in something I'm kind of interested in. So just show an interest to hang around. Opinion 3, mentors. And again, it's great that some of the speakers actually mentioned this in a lot of their talks. It's really important to have some good mentors. It doesn't have to be a professional, hi sir, will you be my mentor? It can be, do you mind if we have a chat over coffee in a few weeks' time? I'm interested in sort of a career maybe like you've had. Do you mind if we go through some questions on my behalf? So it can be sort of flexible like that, or it can be a little bit more professional, and you can use them to discuss sort of life decisions. Some people have clinical mentors, some people have professional mentors, some people have personal mentors. So have to think about, are there any people that you idolise or idolise sort of the path that they've taken, and get in contact with them. A lot of people are really, really willing with their help, really, really willing with their time. You think that you would aspire to be someone like that. I've already mentioned this, so try and get some rural exposure. Some absolutely wonderful patient experiences and rural experiences can be had. I highly, highly recommend this as a medical student, even if you can do it as an elective in your own time. Get some rural experience, and that really shines through well on your CV. And get exposure to different health services. Again, you can do that as either through your scholarly selective, or through your vocational selective, or as an elective. So a bit of advice for the very short-term future: be really well informed. Go to these sessions, which is great. Go onto the PMCV website if you haven't already, even as an MD. Biomed, just leave it for a little bit. As an MD1, go onto the PMC website right now and have a look at the hospital directory that MD4s are currently going through, and sort of the process of internship. Look at websites, come and have a chat with us. at a few different events for junior doctors. Get others to read through your CV. Like I've already mentioned, have a look at those college requirements. I'm almost done with this. And have a think about postgrad qualifications. I know a few have been mentioned, so I'm doing a diploma of child health because I'm interested in children, particularly as a GP. Have a look at there's a whole range. You can do anaesthetics, you can do surgical anatomy, you can do medical administration, you can do business. There's a whole different range, a whole range of things you can do once you've actually finished medical school. So have a think about if you'd be interested. Now this is the last point really that I want to make. How to be a good medical student. So what are the things that you can do now that will help you as an intern? So I've noticed I've got medical students on my ward at the moment, and some of them haven't been attending or not showing interest, that sort of thing. And I just wanted to give you guys a heads up on what you should be doing now. So always offer the help out, whether that's writing med charts, or rewriting med charts, or writing fluid orders, or writing notes to notes. We are so willing, like interns and residents are really busy, but if you offer the help, they will often give it to you, particularly if it's work. I'll give you work to do. So hang around and offer to do two things. That should be offered to examine the patient. When you're on the ward round, what are exams? When you're on the ward rounds, yes, we're busy, but it takes 2 seconds to listen to a chest. So you notice that the registrars, the interns, the residents, they go around, listen to the chest, ask you to write something down potentially, and move on. Take 2 seconds to say, do you mind if I listen to that chest as well? And they will always say yes, like it takes 2 seconds. And that will actually help prepare you as an intern. I found there's a few signs and things that I didn't get to listen to as a med student because I didn't offer myself to examine the patient, so please do that. Respect the nurses, respect the allied health and the doctors. They're the people that are going to be talking about you when you're applying for the jobs. Alright, so like I said, CV doesn't necessarily mean a good doctor, but hopefully you've got a few points to think about from this talk. Careers change all the time. So you've got your 5-year goal plan, but be okay with that changing. A lot of Melbourne Uni students really stick to Melbourne Uni hospitals, and I think that's really to our own detriment. So have a think about going to some Monash hospitals or even interstate if you're thinking about going interstate. I really think that it's great getting experience in different health services, so you can see how different groups do different things. So I really recommend that, particularly as a junior doctor. You and your patients always come first, work-life balance, that sort of thing. And also put yourselves in situations where serendipity will take place. And again, I think this is echoed, or I'm echoing what other speakers have said. Make sure that you hang around and put yourself in situations, because things do happen by chance, yeah, but you have to put yourself there. Alright, thank you. Really late. Does anyone have any questions? If not, I'll be down here. One question at the back.
If you had a career in the past, how would that generally be looked upon by employers and how much emphasis would you put on that in CV?
If you had a career in the past? I mean, yeah, so it's something that will differentiate with some medical graduates. So, it comes through on your qualifications and also the transferable skills. So it's really how you actually paint it. I mean, there are so many things to fit into your CV. A couple of sentences would be great. But remember, recruiters probably don't get past 2 pages. Yeah, what was that? Yeah, the Air Force. Yeah, sure. So I've got a bit of a strange, I'll keep it fast. So I was involved as a pharmacist, as a pharmaceutical officer. I got involved in medical workforce planning for the Defence Force. So I was looking at retaining medical workforce for longer periods of time. I've now transferred over as a medical officer, and so it's really primary care. We also get full training and aeromedical evacuation training. So we're the ones that send over deep planes to disaster relief situations and also in wartime as the Air Force doctors. So primary care, trauma, not much PEDS, not much ONG. If not, down here, any questions? Just one quick thing.
a long overtime. So I was in expanding education this year, so if you have any ideas, just shoot me an email. So our next cohort event will be the code. So I'd just like to play the trailer quickly, take 2 minutes.
As an outsider, this looks like total chaos. But I see unity in that chaos. There's a team here coming together to save someone's life. We're starting our senior year as ER doctors. I had heard this was a very difficult place to train.
It's one of the most challenging places to work. The gap between things is minimal. There's so little tolerance for mistakes. What happened?
During code black, it feels like the place is going to blow up at the seams. I knew being a doctor anywhere else is not going to cut it.
Why am I going to need something?
My dad was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. I wanted to have the ability to help somebody who needed it.
It scares the hell out of you, and it makes you have to work hard, and there's no excuse.
Part of what we're trying to figure out is who we are.
The people in the emergency room were just different.
I really don't work out that much. You're seeing people usually the worst day of their life. How they handle it. I don't expect that to ever get easy.
It really is just about doing the right thing for somebody. When we started this, it seemed so simple. We were going to help people. But as a doctor, the system is sometimes bigger than you.
It becomes this bucket of paperwork of saving somebody's life.
You work so hard, and all it takes is one thing to kind of top.
You have to ask yourself, how do I protect the ideals I came here for?
With crushing regulations on hospitals, they're tying your hands.
People that need help are turned away.
It's heartbreaking, soul crushing, actually.
People leave because they can't wait anymore. The doctors are we can do better.
Someone is suffering. What are you going to do?
It's about these big that are larger than life. We're in a crisis situation. I think those are pretty high stakes.
Fighting to save someone's life.
Yeah, we have to.